Good afternoon, class.
Good afternoon, teacher.
This is my 7th lecture. Selected readings in British and American poetry. I'll talk about WaltWhitman and his short poem, Oneself I Sing. I'll first give a brief introduction to WaltWhitman, a poet, and his lifelong work, Leaves of Grass. And then we'll have more of a focus on his short poem, Oneself I Sing. I'm large, I contain multitudes. Says WaltWhitman toward the end of his SongofMyself, a long poem which serves to introduce him to American readers when his Leaves of Grass was first published in 1855. This line best describes both the poet, WaltWhitman, and his lifelong work, Leaves of Grass. Probably the best-known book of American poetry ever written, Leaves of Grass is first and foremost a testament to Whitman's oceanic mind and his enormous imagination. This picture of WaltWhitman appeared in the 1855 edition of Leaves of Grass, replacing the author's name. We don't see the author's name on the frontispiece. It is from a steel engraving by Samuel Hollier after the daguerreotype by Gabriel Harrison. Readers could only find Whitman's name by reading his first long poem, later called SongofMyself, where he included his name in line 497, or the first line in section 24, in which he says, WaltWhitman, a cosmos of Manhattan, the sun. Leaves of Grass does contain multitudes of people, including characters as vivid as those in stories and novels by American prose writers. But by taking this picture as an integral part of his book, Whitman dramatized his poetic presentation of the most vivid character in the work, a persona created as part of his goal to revolutionize American poetry. Whitman achieved that goal because no poet before him was so wholly American, so committed to celebrating American democracy and identity. For this reason, Whitman has been honored as the father of modern American poetry, the first truly great American poet, an artist who sprang off the platform of European poetic models and soared into new territory. Besides, no American poet after Whitman could claim to be entirely free from his influence. The voice of WaltWhitman echoes in poems of one generation after another in America. Now let me read aloud a few lines from SongofMyself to see whether we can get a sense of Whitman's voice. Have you reckoned 1,000 acres much? Have you reckoned the earth much? Have you practiced so long to learn to read? Have you felt so proud to get the meaning of poems? Stop this day and night with me, and you should possess the origin of all poems. You should possess the good of the earth and sun. There are millions of suns left. You should no longer take things at second or third hand. nor look through the eyes of the dead, nor feed on spectres of books. You should not look through my eyes either, nor take things from me. You should listen to all sides, and filter them from yourself. To me, these lines echo exactly to what Ralph Waldo Emerson questioned about at the beginning of his essay, Nature, which was published in 1836. Emerson says, "The foregoing generations behold God and nature face to face, we through their eyes. Why should not we also enjoy an original relation to the universe? Why should not we have a poetry and philosophy of insight and not of tradition, and a relation by revelation to us and not the history of theirs? Why should we grope among the dry bones of the past, or put the living generation into the masquerade out of its faded wardrobe? The sun shines today also. There is more wool flax in the fields. There are new lands, new men, new thoughts. Let us demand our own works, laws, and worship." So to me, both of their remarks both seems to have merged into one common voice of their age. America had long been calling for a new poet, so as to present what Emerson says, new lands, new men, and new thoughts. Unlike most of his contemporary poets, Whitman opened up an unlimited space for American poetry. His accents were primitive, his tones crude, and his lines broke away the tradition of British poetry. In fact, ever since the beginning of his career, Whitman had actually assumed for himself the role of a poet-prophet. He took himself as a poet-prophet, the primitive seer. The primitive seer, he saw, but others do not. Others did not. The American frontiersman of democracy. And this is Song of Myself. Song of Myself is a long poem which consists of 52 sections altogether. Here we have the opening lines and the ending lines. The poem opens with these lines: "I celebrate myself and sing myself, and what I assumed you should assume, for every atom belonging to me as good belongs to you." And the poem ends with these two lines: "Missing me one place, search another. I stop somewhere waiting for you." So you see, the poem begins with the word I and ends with the word you. But this you remains in the poem to and through the end, though the I is always in the foreground. I would like to say not many poets before Whitman have made so much of the reader as he does throughout Leaves of Grass. Even in his earliest poem of his, Whitman's I is interchangeable with you. He is trying to dissolve the I by emphasizing whatever joins the I to the you, the surrounding world, and whatever makes the I like the you, the other human beings in general. Whitman's Song of Myself, therefore, turns out to be a song of Walt Whitman, a cosmos of Manhattan the sun. It is large and contains multitudes, It's a song of common men, including the poet, WaltWhitman himself, and also every one of us. Now, WaltWhitman, A Cosmos of Manhattan, the Sun. As I mentioned, when Leaves of Grass was first published, readers didn't see the poet's name on the front page, not until section 24 in his first long poem, later called Song of Myself, did we read this line, WaltWhitman, A Cosmos of Manhattan, the Sun. Now, who is WaltWhitman? Whitman was born in Long Island, New York, in 1819, raised in Brooklyn. His mother came from a family of Dutch horse breeder. His father was descended from English Puritans who had farmed American soil for a century and a half. This is a picture of Whitman's birthplace, Long Island. And he left school at the age of 11, worked as an office boy in Brooklyn, New York, where his family had moved in 1823. In 1831, he went to work for Samuel Clemens, the printer and editor of Long Island Patriot, a newspaper. Like many American writers, such as Mark Twain and Ernest Hemingway, Whitman got much of his education from his newspaper work. First, as a type compositor, and then as a journalist and editor. But New York was not a source of wealth for an uneducated, self-conscious youth. So after a few months, Whitman went back to Long Island. He stayed there until he was 22 years old, living with his relatives, teaching school, delivering papers, and contributing pieces to the Long Island Democrat. In 1841, Whitman returned to Brooklyn. At the age of 23, he became an editor. As a reporter, he visited every corner of this area, spent much time in the theaters, cultivated the opera. He enjoyed watching operas and flirted with street corner politics. In 1848, Whitman left New York and became a special writer on the staff of Daily Crescent, an independent newspaper in New Orleans. But after 3 months, he was dismissed, possibly because of his careless writing. Returning to New York, Whitman began editing another paper. His failures as a journalist did not yet convince him that he was mistaking his career. When he was 30 years old, he was in charge of the Brooklyn Freeman. And this Free Soil journal soon shifted its political course, since Whitman was not very active in doing work there, so he withdrew in September 1849. Then he became a freelance writer. So as a freelance, he wrote for New York Evening Post and the Advertiser, and he became a metropolitan bohemian, and then began to write a book, which was his life work. So when Leaves of Grass was first published in 1855, Whitman was 37. So 1855 Leaves of Grass was an epoch-making column, but it made its first appearance as a poorly printed pamphlet of only 12 poems brought out anonymously, bearing, instead of a signature, a portrait of the author with one hand in his pocket, the other on his hip, the characteristic open shirt and a slouch hat rakishly tilted. In terms of critical reviews of Leaves of Grass, reviewers generally greeted the work with bafflement and frequently outright hostility. Fortunately, one of the first copies of the pamphlet was sent to Ralph Waldo Emerson, who wrote the famous letter of July 21st, 1855, praised the young writer, and called the book the most extraordinary piece of written wisdom that America has yet contributed. Emerson said, "I find incomparable things said incomparably well," in this book. "I greet you at the beginning of a great career, which yet must have had a long foreground somewhere for such a start." When Whitman published his first edition of Leaves of Grass on and around the 4th of July in 1855, National Day, he believed that he had engaged in a personal literary journey of national significance. Setting out to define the American experience, Whitman consciously hoped to answer Emerson's call for a truly original national poet, a poet who will sing of the new country in a new voice, the new lands, new men, and new thought. Although he had published only a small handful of poems before 1855, Whitman felt confident that the time was ripe and that the people would embrace him. His confidence resulted largely from his awareness of the tremendous changes in the American literary world that had taken place during the first half of the 19th century. By 1855, America could boast one of the world's largest and most advanced publishing industries, producing distinctly American books by such writers as Emerson, Thoreau, Hawthorne, Melville, and Edgar Allan Poe. The amazing growth of American literature and of the supporting publishing industries was the result of a self-conscious effort by American authors and publishers to establish for the United States a literary culture of its own. Between 1830s and 50s, the number of American newspapers grew from 36 to 254. The advent of modern publishing practices during this period brought books and newspapers to people in an unimaginable number. Working as a printer, editor, journalist, and publisher during the years of the publishing industry's phenomenal growth, Whitman became a bohemian observer of the society. He was keenly aware that the tools necessary for his emergence as the new and democratic poet were near at his hands. His experience as a journalist was an important bank account experience because it was very direct exposure to the society. to reality. And we see nothing bookish in Whitman's education. And probably, well, this is the way Whitman learned about the American society. We would like to say a new medium fostered a new perfection with a new personality. Whitman believed that he could bring poetry to common people. With the publication of 1855 Leaves of Grass, where Whitman assumed for himself the role of the new American poet. So he referred to himself as a cosmos of Manhattan, the sun. A cosmos indicating that he had an oceanic mind. Okay, now let's look at his short poem, Oneself, I Sin. Oneself, I sin, a simple, separate person, yet utter the word democratic, the word en masse. Of physiology from top to toe I sin. Not physiognomy alone, nor brain alone is worthy for the muse. I say the form complete is worthier far. The female equally with the male I sin. Of life immense, impassioned pulse and power, cheerful, for freest action formed under the laws divine. The modern man I sin. This is my translation, included in one of my papers published in Peking University Journal a long time ago. Now, the first two lines. Oneself I sin, simple, separate person, yet utter the word democratic, the word en masse. This poem is the first poem of Leaves of Grass, in which we see immediately the core of the book's democratic idea, Whitman's idea about American democracy. And the question, of course, is why oneself rather than myself? Why does Whitman want to sing oneself rather than himself? Because, well, Whitman, he not only wants to sing of himself, but also wants to celebrate everyone else. So this oneself, therefore, includes simple, separate person, and yet, at the same time, a democratic self, the en masse. This oneself is an expanded one, is an all-inclusive one. It's a self includes everyone else. It is the self Whitman celebrates here and elsewhere throughout the whole book in his, well, Leaves of Grass. It includes, paradoxically, both the self in its ordinary sense, a simple, separate person, and a larger, more inclusive, more democratic self. En masse is a French word, meaning people banding together as a unified force. Whitman believed that democracy depended on people who were individuals, capable of thinking for themselves, but at the same time a part of the whole society. So this, well, self includes, well, individuals and also the whole society. And these, well, opening two lines present Whitman's simple definition of democracy and become the theme for Leaves of Grass. And the first line of the book, well, defines the self in its essence as like a detached person. It's a separate, simple person, a detached person. But the word yet at the beginning of the second line turns the meaning away from detachment to attachment en masse. So we can read WaltWhitman's one's self into a self that is simple, separate, personal, private, particular, individualistic, lyrical. And paradoxically, we can also read his en masse into a self that is democratic, social, public, universal, collective, heterogeneous, epic, so forth. Professor James Miller, a famous Whitman scholar, he says in his book, here is the germ of Whitman's radical innovation. Now we see what is Whitman's innovation. His inspiration is lyric. His ambition is epic. One to be fitted within the structure of the other. A lyric is traditionally defined as a short poem expressing the thoughts and feelings of the poet or speaker. On the surface, the lyric appears poles apart from the epic. Lyric seems totally different from epic. Embodying, as it does, the poet's own physical, emotional, moral, intellectual, aesthetic personality. There is a lyric. The title of this book is Leaves of Grass, America's Lyric Epic of Self and Democracy. Professor James Miller also says, but while Whitman in effect decided to cast himself in the role of his own epic hero, using his lyric gift not only to express himself, but also to tally. Tally means, correspond with the momentous spirit and facts. Momentous means, important, significant, of his immediate days and of current America. So here we see, the connection between the poet and his time and society. This is Professor James Miller's hope for me, with great expectations for his future in defining lyric epic. So Whitman's, Leaves of Grass is a lyric epic. On one hand, it celebrates the poet himself. On the other hand, it's a song of every common man. So it's totally different from traditional Western epics. Of physiology from top to toe I sing. Not physiognomy alone, nor brain alone is worthy for the muse. I say the form complete is worthy afar. The female equal with the male I sing. Physiology, it means biology. It's a scientific study of how bodies function. So in Leaves of Grass, in Whitman's poetry, he also wrote about body. Physiognomy means features of a person's face, your appearance. Not your appearance, not the beauty of your facial appearance. Nor brain alone is worthy for the muse. I say the form complete is worthy of far. Form complete, that is complete form. So you want to celebrate the complete form, that is body and soul. Body and soul. So this line of physiology from top to toe I sing indicates that Whitman wants to sing of the body. He believes that people receive their individual identities through their bodies. But at the same time, people are physically universal because they bind themselves together in common humanity. Much of Whitman's progressive politics of poetry will follow from this emphasis on the body. We can notice his introduction of the theme of physiology is followed by his insistence on the political quality of male and female, the muse. As I mentioned in my lecture on Milton, that an epic poet signals his dependence on supernatural beings, the muse, to guide him in writing poetry. Milton follows all the rules of epic genre in his invocation. In the opening section of his Paradise Lost, he invokes the muse. Sing, heavenly muse. He invokes, the muse. It seems, to me, Whitman here also follows the rule of an epic invocation, stating confidently that the form complete is worthier far, and he wants to sing of the female equally with the male. No American poet before Whitman, I guess, was so bold and brave in singing of the body as Whitman did. Of life immense in passion, pulse, and power, cheerful for free section formed under the laws divine. The modern man I sing. The 3 lines is difficult in terms of grammar. How to straighten out, the sentence. It's only a sentence. The 3 lines form only one sentence. Of. We are familiar with this of. Of man's first disobedience, the fruit of that forbidden tree, whose mortal taste brought death into the world and all our world. So Milton opens up his epic with this word. Here, Whitman also wants to sing the modern man of life, which is immense in passion, pulse, and power, and at the same time, a life which is cheerful, because free action formed under the divine laws. This is my paraphrase. So we need to straighten the sentence out. His poetic lines are very long. I sing of the modern man, of immense life in passion, pulse, and power, and of cheerful life, for the freest action is formed under the divine law. I guess we are familiar with the Chinese saying, 从心所欲而不逾矩. Notice the use of alliteration here in these few lines. Immense life in passion, pulse, and power. This is very positive, hopeful, powerful. And you see free form, free section formed under the laws divine. So we can say the alliteration here reinforces the immensity of the massive possibilities of modern life, and also emphasizes paradoxically the freedom that modern man enjoys under the law. Another thing that I want to mention is the poem ends with a hymnal ending, or we say a hymnal tone. The poem ends so softly with a pleasing hymn to the modern man in his immense yet cheerful life. It is an immense life in passion, pulse, and power. It is also a cheerful life because people enjoy the greatest for freedom under the divine law. So this is Whitman's one's self. Okay, I celebrate myself. This is also a very famous line. It's opening line of the first edition of Leaves of Grass. I celebrate myself. Later on, Whitman added the second part of this line. I celebrate myself and sing myself. I celebrate myself and sing myself. If you scan this line, we'll have a very neat iambic pentameter line. I celebrate myself and sing myself. My reading of Whitman's, adding or addition of the second part of this line is he wanted to tell us that he was going to write an epic, because a traditional epic was written in iambic pentameter. This is my reading. It's open for discussion. I would just like to read aloud a few passages from Song of Myself to you, and hoping that you can get a sense of Whitman's passion, pulse, and power. And when we come back to discuss Emily Dickinson's poem next week, we can have a comparative study of Whitman and Emily Dickinson. Whitman and Emily Dickinson were contemporaries, but they were totally different. So we'll have a discussion, a comparative study of the two poets. Now, let's look at Song of Myself. I celebrate myself and sing myself. And what I assumed, you should assume. For every atom belonging to me as good belongs to you. I loathe and invite my soul. I lean and loaf at my ease, observing spirit of summer grass. My tongue, every atom of my blood, formed from this soil, this air, born here of parents, born here from parents the same, and their parents the same. I, now 37 years old, in perfect health begin, hoping to cease not till death. Crescent schools in abeyance, retiring back a while, sufficed at what they are, but never forgotten. I harbored for good or bad, I permit to speak at every hazard, nature without check, with original energy. Have you reckoned 1,000 acres much? Have you reckoned the earth much? Have you practiced so long to learn to read? Have you felt so proud to get the meaning of poems? Stop this day and night with me, and you should possess the origin of all poems. You should possess the good of the earth and sun. There are millions of suns left. You should no longer take things at second or third hand, nor look through the eyes of the dead, nor feed on spectres in books. You should not look through my eyes either, nor take things from me. You should listen to all sides and filter them for yourself. Okay, assignments. Recitation. Try to recite the poem, Oneself I Sing. And write a journal discussing Whitman's democratic ideas embodied in his poem. Read before class the following poems by Emily Dickinson. First, I'm nobody. Who are you? You see it pretty interesting. Whitman wants to celebrate myself and sing myself, but Emily Dickinson says, I'm nobody. Who are you? Are you nobody too? Then there is a pair of us. And the second one is the soul selects her own society. And the last one is, this is my letter to the world. And these are the three poems that we'll have more of a focus next time when we meet. But try to read the chapter on Emily Dickinson in your textbook. Okay, thank you very much.